Thanks to Susan D. for sponsoring Destination Eat Drink. You can support the podcast at buymeacoffee.com/Destination Eat Drink.
Destination Eat Drink.
I would say that one of the things I would embrace the menu d'idea. Every restaurant has a menu d'idea. If you go to a sushi restaurant, they're going to have a menu d'idea, and you'll be offered choices of a first course and a second course, and maybe a dessert, and it'll include bread and drink and a coffee at the end. And it'll be where the chefs at all these little restaurants show their stuff. They're only going to make three main courses a day or 4 main courses a day, and there's very interesting choices almost always at these restaurants.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Welcome to Destination Eat Drink, the travel podcast for foodies, because the best part of any trip is what you eat. I'm Brent Peterson, and this week we're in Barcelona with my guest, Kevin Brass. Kevin has worked and lived all over the world, writing on a variety of topics, including architecture for the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, the Wall Street Journal, and many other prestigious publications. Kevin's currently working on a book about Barcelona and its quirky and hidden gem stories. You can find his writings on his Substack at Kevin Brass and at barcelonaanarchy.com. Kevin and I talk about the unique design of Barcelona, the famous Sagrada Familia, toothpick tapas, Spain's answer to champagne, artisan vermouth, and I'm starving, so let's eat.
Destination Eat Drink.
Kevin Brass from BarcelonaAnarchy.com. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink. Can't wait to talk to you about one of the most vibrant and exciting cities in the whole world.
Thanks for having me. I'm always eager to talk Barcelona.
Yeah, you've been all over the world. You've lived and worked all over the world. How did Barcelona in particular get under your skin?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always feel very comfortable here. It always, for me, it always became about hanging out in Barcelona. There was always work here. There was always interesting stories here. There's always lots going on. But the more I hung out, the more I realized that the things I liked about the city, as an architecture and urban planning geek, a lot of the things that were happening in the history of the city, all the things I liked about the city were decisions, things that had happened and decisions that were made over the years and sometimes centuries that resulted in the city of today. And I just became more and more fascinated, became more and more comfortable hanging out here.
You mentioned architecture. You call yourself an architecture geek, so I'm not using that as a pejorative. You self-described yourself as an architecture geek. And Barcelona would be a great place for someone who's interested in architecture. It was just named a world capital for architecture in 2026. Well-deserved, I would say. But what is it about the architecture of Barcelona that makes it so unique? Because it's one of those cities where when you're in Barcelona, you couldn't be anywhere else.
And that happened organically to a certain extent, but it also happened because there was a creative surge in this area. There's tremendous craftsmen in Catalonia that were helping those architects at a very particular time. It was a chain of events in a city that was just moving beyond its old walls. And so there was all this fresh land that was being created and this new city that was being created, and all at the same time. So there was a spark of energy at a very particular point in time. And there's all these different influences. And then there was also this willingness to do things differently. So those outlandish Gaudi and Art Nouveau buildings happened because there was a willingness to push some boundaries in something that was really new to Europe. And I became more and more fascinated by those stories behind the architecture as much as the architecture.
You said there was this creative surge in Barcelona and at a certain period of time. So that certain period of time, that would be approximately 100 years ago when Gaudi was running around and these other folks were running around?
If you want to go even a step further, it's more specifically in the mid 1800s. Barcelona was in fact a walled city. And when they decided to take down the wall, they had all this land in front of the city, which is now the area called the Champlain. And that was all designed at the same time. It's still considered probably one of the largest urban master plans ever created. And so all those blocks that you see that are so distinctive to Barcelona, with the notched corners and the uniform height and the wide sidewalks with all those cafes, that was all designed at the same time. And so there was this explosion of construction at the end of the 1800s, and that's what started to that world of Gaudi and the modernists, because they were designing this new district with no rules.
I love the wide sidewalks in Barcelona, not least of which because I live in Portugal, and Portugal's not exactly known for wide sidewalks in the towns and the villages. And one of the great annoyances is trying to get from point A to point B when the sidewalks are all crowded, and I have to walk into the street because, bunch of guys are standing there smoking a cigarette.
That's why it's a great walkable city, because I know what you're talking about in Lisbon and the other areas where it's sometimes just hard to move around. Whereas in Barcelona, they were already taking into account things like the movement of air to keep fresh air through the city. So you can walk through and find areas where you can still get sunlight while you walk through the city. And that's all intentional.
So I'm wondering, how I, as a layperson, or other visitors as a layperson who really don't know a ton about architecture, I mean, maybe, we understand a few different architectural styles as we travel, but we're not experts on architecture. How would you give us advice to enjoy Barcelona from an architectural standpoint?
There are some good tours, but each of the sites usually has a really great walking tour. And I really would advise you to take that recording and take that extra effort to hear the stories as you're walking through, to find out all the little details and why that detail is the way it is. Just to take that little extra effort, because each one is in fact different. And the other thing I would just say is it goes far beyond Gaudi in Barcelona, that people sort of stop there and they think that's what it's all about. And there's a lot more to it.
I'm going to unfortunately go back to Gaudi, because Sagrada Familia is definitely the number one attraction in Barcelona. And when I was there 20 years ago, it was a really rough construction site. I mean, there were Caterpillar tractors inside the church when I was there 20 years ago. And, they were saying, well, maybe this thing will be finished in another 100 years or so. That was kind of the timeline they were talking about. Now it's almost done. 20 years later, it's almost completed. Do you have any tips or thoughts into the process of the building of the Sagrada Familia, or how we can enjoy it?
Yeah, I would say there's more to it. I have written about this, and I have an essay in my book on this, because there is more to this story than what you get in those tours and the idea of what Gaudi was trying to do. One element that gets discussed a lot is that a lot of his designs and models and actual thought process were destroyed. And so we really don't know a lot about what he actually wanted to. And what you're seeing in the Sagrada Familia is a compilation of different artists putting their stamp on it. The other element too, and I wrote about this recently too, is this is fascinating, is that there's a big movement to make Gaudi a saint now, based on his work with Sagrada Familia.
Yes.
So it's taking on a completely different role now in the church, and there's a strong movement within Barcelona to make this happen and to really make Sagrada Familia, something, the church of the world, basically. It is. I think it's now the largest. I think it's the tallest, perhaps. And so it's really having a larger significance in the Catholic world in general.
If you're enjoying Destination Eat Drink, take a moment to rate and review the show on your podcast app. It just takes a moment, and it helps other foodie travelers just like you find the show. And if you want to hear more of my conversation with Kevin, become a member of my Substack. Members get access to the full interview, where we go more in depth about cava, and Kevin gives some off-the-beaten-path Barcelona tips. Become a member of my Substack at destinationeatdrink.substack.com. Barcelona's been the center for over-tourism and the over-tourism debate for a few years now. And I always like to ask folks when I talk about some of these cities that have been in the headlines for over-tourism, how can we as visitors enjoy the city but still get away from the crowds? We talked about Sagrada Familia. You're going to wait in line there and you're going to be shoulder to shoulder with people, but how can we get away from this massive humanity when we come and visit Barcelona?
Yeah, and it is a problem, and it is because you have to go, if you're here for the first time, you have to go to Sagrada Familia. You have to do some of these things. And I get that. But really, once you are, and I am biased about this, but once you've spent some time here, it's really worth it to get as far away from the tourist areas as you can. To me, the beauty of the city is, in fact, when you start living in the neighborhoods. And there's all sorts of things to do away from the Gothic quarter and La Rambla. And all the problems that when you hear the problems of Barcelona, that's where they are. And a lot of that over-tourism talk in Barcelona is very specific to things like the cruise traffic. When the cruise ships come in, it's just a different place. And so you want to be away from those areas when the cruise ships come in. And the conventions, right? So these are things that can be controlled. And I think that's where a lot of the debate is just how much of that are you going to allow?
Yeah, we lived in a couple of places that were inundated with cruise ships, Honolulu, Charleston, South Carolina, and now in Lisbon. You know, we don't live in Lisbon, thank goodness, but you go into Lisbon, we take the ferry across to Lisbon, and you see these cruise ships that are like 10 stories high. And when we see that, we know automatically this is going to be a bad day in certain parts of Lisbon, and we need to get away from that as soon as possible because it just disengorges thousands. And sometimes if there's 3 cruise ships, you could have 10,000 people that are just massing around, and they're in this one area of Lisbon. And if you get away from that, you got the city to yourself, really, with the locals.
But if you go at 10 o'clock when those ships are coming in, it's a different place.
One thing that I've really liked to do recently is, especially in these cities that have good public transportation, you can stay outside of these city centers and you can get whisked in with a metro or a tram or something like that and stay at a hotel that's outside of the city center and still enjoy, even if it's your first visit, and still enjoy all of the amenities of being in the city while being outside of it. And as a plus, often the hotels are much cheaper than they are in that city center. That's one of my things that I've been really focusing on lately with my travels.
Great tip. It's such a European city thing, right? I mean, you always come back to the United States. So why can't we have that too, right? I mean, because it's so nice to be able to have that network and be able to get on it. It's very easy to get it around Barcelona. There's a strong metro system. There's a strong network of taxis that are reliable and clean and professional. And it just works. It just works better.
Would you have a neighborhood that you would suggest people can go to that's outside the city center that might be nice to stay in?
Well, it's funny because a lot of people talk about the day trips. Like you can stay in Sitges, for example, which is a 20-minute train ride south of Barcelona.
Easy.
It's a completely different. It's a little beach town, right? And it's all sorts of little towns along the train route just outside Barcelona. But even if Barcelona is still a relatively compact city, so if you stay just outside of Gracia, it's a little town, which is a former little village just on the edge of the city, or Sadia further up on the hill, you can feel pretty removed from the center of the city. You're outside the tourist zones. You're just a little further up the hill.
Let's talk about food. And I don't think that we can talk about Barcelona or any city in Spain really without talking about tapas, Kevin. Tell me about some of your favorite tapas joints in Barcelona.
You well know Catalonia is a center for this explosion of artistic, wonderful culinary artists doing their best work. And that's not the world I am familiar with in any way. So I have to say that out front. And a lot of when we were talking too, I was thinking about this more. My experiences also as a journalist, I was here alone a lot. I was staying by, and so my experiences, I was in and out. So So a lot of the food, a lot of my experiences is sort of me as a guy, just, okay, I got to eat. So the tapa bar thing is really convenient for me. It's great for me. And, I personally love what I always refer to as the toothpick tapa places, where you can the tapas are aligned on the counter, and you just take one and put it on your plate, and you're charged by the number of toothpicks. And that's a very easy way for a single guy to go. So I like sort of the working tapa places, and you can always see the tapa places where there's a line out front, and you tell that they're locals, and they don't have the frills. So those are the ones I'm always looking for, where I can get in easy and there's locals hanging out.
Yeah, on this podcast, we do occasionally talk about high-end cuisine and Michelin-starred, but really it's about where are the locals going? What are the dishes that they're eating? What kinds of things would we expect when we go there? Because to me, that's the most interesting stuff. And another factor that I love to talk about on this show is, what are the immigrants bringing to the city? I guess I haven't been to Barcelona enough to know what the immigration profile is like there. So I'm not even sure what's going on there. But from a tapas point of view, when you talk about toothpick tapas joints, what kind of tapas are we talking about? What would be a good example of a toothpick tapas in your world, Kevin?
It can be a piece of bread with some sausage on it, or maybe a spread. A lot of, you'll have some fish on there. You'll have some creative remoulade or something on there, some olives, and it really is a pretty wide spectrum. It could be a croquette. It could of some sort. So it's really all over the map. And I will say that Barcelona is a great mix of ethnic restaurants too. So that's also, because I'm also a lazy eater. I embrace that quite a bit when I'm in Barcelona, and that is really where I end up going a lot. I mean, and there's a wide spectrum. There's great Indian restaurants. There's a very large Chinese population. I saw several Filipino restaurants when I was walking around last night. It was just really random stuff. A lot of African food is here. It's a really interesting mix.
All good stuff that I look to seek out, in Lisbon and all over Portugal. Really, there's great Indian food, because Portugal had an Indian colony for centuries. And there's also amazing African food. We've got friends who are coming in from the States in a couple of weeks, and I said, we're going to go to some African restaurants in Alfama. And I think they were a little bit surprised that I wasn't going to take them out for Portuguese food, that I was going to take them out for African food. And I'm like, listen, this is the place to be. If you really want to have interesting cuisine, search out African food in Lisbon specifically, but all over Portugal, because all of these colonies that they had, whether it's Mozambique or Angola, or, you'll even see Moroccan restaurants here, they have amazing food, stuff that you haven't had before, stuff that you wouldn't normally see. And they usually have great fire water at the end of the meal. So it's a lot of fun.
I just remember too that I am sort of thinking about where I'm going to be eating over the next couple of weeks. And I realized that there's a Moroccan place right around the corner that I'm going to have to try.
Oh, good.
That should be good. Yeah, all those are really tasty. And and again, full disclosure, I come from that dumbass American background. So I don't like sardines that much. I don't like a lot of the fishes and oily. I'm just not, so a lot of the things that are very inherent to Catalonia are not high on my list. So I have to sort of find the things I like. A lot of the parts of the pig that
Well, there's certainly plenty of pig parts to be eaten in Catalonia, that's for sure.
It's a lot of the staples here.
Yeah.
Good ham, right? Yeah. Good ham.
So when we're having our tapa, we definitely have to have a beer with it. Do you have a favorite beer that you look for, or do you just grab whatever the lager is?
Yeah, I'm not a beer guy. I will say that cava is very easy to embrace here. And the wine in general is very easy to embrace. I mean, as I'm sure you know, you can get a good bottle of cava for $4 here, for €4, and you can find some good hearty Rioja and good local wines. Spanish wines are great, and it's relatively inexpensive, and it can really, if you're living on a budget, you can really help yourself out here just by from the cava and the wine.
For folks who don't know, I think most people know by now what cava is, but it's the sparkling wine from the Penedese region, which is right by Barcelona. If you go to Barcelona, you can do a day trip and visit these caves where they make the cava. I've done it. Yeah. It's a fun little excursion. And cava is delicious, and it's a lot less expensive than champagne. It's kind of an everyday drink in Barcelona. Do we get it? It's been so long since I've been in Barcelona. Is it on tap? Is it coming from the bottle? How do you enjoy cava when you're in Barcelona?
Well, first off, I'm taking note of that day trip. I did not know you could do that. That sounds like a very fun idea. Typically, I would say it's in the bottle. I hesitate to say because I don't know if it comes from the tap, but yeah, I usually get it from in the bottle. And there's a couple of great little cava tapa bar restaurants. I wrote about one on my site recently called Can Paxiano, which is very popular, and it's mainly just it's a family cava place. That's what they specialize in. And you go in and it's a really hopping lunch place. All they serve is sandwiches and bocadillos and cheeses and ham, and that's all they serve is cava. And there's no seats. There's just barrels. You just stand around the barrels and drink cava and have little sandwiches.
Love it.
Which is perfect for me.
There's a lot more food and travel at destinationeatdrink.com. I just posted a story about a very unusual beer made from a legume. Read that at destinationeatdrink.com/blog. I also just posted a brand new food and travel guide. This one is to Nice, France. If you're planning a trip to France or the French Riviera, this is a must-have. I share everything to eat and drink like soca and salad niçoise and torte blette and much, much more. Download your copy at buymeacoffee.com/destinationeatdrink. And I posted a brand new video. In this one, I visit Porto's world-famous market with Ricardo from Taste Porto Food Tours. We try some delicious local snacks, some wine, and Ricardo tells me the tale of a famous cake. Watch that by clicking on the video tab at destinationeatdrink.com or head over to my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/@destinationeatdrink946. I got on the Kevin Brass bandwagon with your Substack about Barcelona and at barcelonaanarchy.com. I like your writing. I love your enthusiasm for your topics that you cover, your architecture and just life in Barcelona in general. And I'll have a link in the show notes. But one of the most interesting stories that really resonated with me as a person who's interested in food and travel was a story about your favorite pulperia. And first off, what is exactly a pulperia?
It is simply pulpo is octopus, and it is a octopus-focused restaurant. It's in most cases it'll serve very little else other than octopus, and it's another one of those things which is not necessarily a Barcelona thing. A lot of the things that you find in Barcelona are not necessarily Barcelona things, but this is probably from the Galician region of Spain that was moved into adopt. There was some immigration within Spain, and I was learning about this myself, and that's where the pulperias tend to come from. The main dish will typically just be sort of a steamed octopus with lemon and garlic, and it's great.
People should be aware that, Barcelona is a very cosmopolitan city. And not only is it drawing people from all around the world to live there, but also from around Spain, which is why you get Galician dishes like octopus, which is from Galicia, served in Barcelona. It's very interesting. Do you have a favorite place where you go to get pulpo?
And so just before, I think that's a really good point. So you got the Galician influence, but then you've got the Andalusian influence as well. You've got a lot of those different feels. But I think one of the reasons Barcelona is different too and this is true in many ways, but also true of the culinary scene, is it's very close to France. And so a lot of the influences are more French than Spanish in some ways, just for generational. I do have a favorite pulperia. It's right next to the El Born. If you know the old district of Barcelona, the best reference point is right next to the El Born Cultural Center, and it's just a little dive bar kind of setting. And I just go in and get a plate of good pulpo, and very, very easy and the real deal.
All right. Well, we'll have a link to that story in the show notes as well, so that people can read about that in your favorite place, Kevin. What other tips do you have for folks who are visiting Barcelona, whether it's for the first time or whether it's a repeat visit?
I would say that one of the things I would embrace the menu day dia. Every restaurant has a menu day dia. If you go to a sushi restaurant, they're going to have a menu day dia. But the old, this is typically the afternoon meal as well. As you know, it's usually going to be the 2:30, 3 o'clock meal. And you'll be offered choices of a first course and a second course and maybe a dessert. And it'll include bread and drink and a coffee at the end. May cost anywhere from 13 to 18 euro. And it'll be where the chefs at all these little restaurants show their stuff. They're only going to make three main courses a day or 4 main courses a day. And there's very interesting choices almost always at these restaurants. And you really get a chance to sample a lot of different dishes. And just take a shot. You can just find something and you sit down at a restaurant and, it's a great opportunity, to try a lot of different meals. This is something you'll understand, as an American. I think people spend too much time trying to find what is hard to find here. In other words, they try to find that American breakfast, or they want to find what they're used to. And that can be hard, and you're not going to find it that well. You might find an American breakfast, but it might not be very good. And I think you got to let those things go. To a certain degree, and just try that weird salted fish or try that sausage and just give it a shot. And the other thing I would probably say is just ask questions. I often don't know what I'm looking at, and it's worth finding out. You might be surprised, and in Barcelona there will always be a good story behind what you're eating.
Yeah, even if you don't like it, it's, you'll get a good story out of it. And what are you out, $10, $15, but you've tried something new and you might find something that you really, really love. I've said this so many times on the podcast. What drives me crazy is walking down a street in one of these cities and seeing a line out the door for Starbucks, or McDonald's or something like that. I'm like, you came all the way here. You spent all this money and now you're having a Big Mac. To each his own, but I just don't get it.
Well, and one of the best parts about Barcelona is once you get outside the main tourist area, you won't find any of those chains. You can't, if you wanted to eat at a Burger King outside the tourist area, you wouldn't be able to find it, which I love. The other thing that's really important to note about Barcelona food as we talk about it, the things I really, really love is that there's really an entrepreneurial spirit to the food scene here. And there's a lot of focus on healthy, organic, fresh ingredients. And you see it everywhere. And that's the other thing, too, is if you're looking for food in Barcelona, I would always encourage you to find the places that are pushing that. Because when they talk about fresh ingredients, it'll be the real deal. And they'll be taking it seriously. And you'll find some great dishes.
You're working on a book right now, Kevin, about Barcelona. Tell me a little bit about it. What topics are you going to be covering, and when's it coming out?
It's a collection of essays on different topics. I'm on the home stretch, so it's going to be a bit before it's going to be available. But I'm looking at the different things that I find fascinating about the elements that shape Barcelona, as well as making it a great place to live. So it's a place. So I want it to be the book that you read before you go or when you come home, when you want ready to dive into it more. So there'll be stories about Gaudi that you may not know about. There'll be stories about art and Dali. Why did Dali get so focused on Catalonia? Why did he stay there? I have stories about the Spanish Civil War and its influence on what you see in Barcelona today. I'm working on a piece while I'm here, this week on the forgotten modernist, one of the most prolific modernist architects of the early 1900s that you've never heard about, but you see his buildings everywhere. Things like that. But I also have a story on doing breakfast in Barcelona and just what it means to go. I went drinking. I drank vermouth with famous food writer Matt Golding, and we went out to the vermuterias in Barcelona. And so I have a wide variety of topics.
How did Matt like vermouth?
Oh, he's a very big fan of vermouth. But do you know Matt? Do you know the name? Or?
I know his name. I don't know him personally, no.
Yeah. Yeah, because he's worked with Jose Anders and Anthony Bourdain over the years, and he's a great writer. He does talk about the idea that he wasn't a big fan of vermouth when he started, but he embraced the social ideas of it, and it really is a social drink in Barcelona. It's a Sunday afternoon drink, and it brings people together, and like many things in Barcelona, it goes beyond the actual element of the food or the drink and becomes something more in the culture of the community.
Yeah, I mean, to me, vermouth was always, growing up in the States, was always like a grandmother drink, and I always thought that's what it was. And then I went to Madrid, and everywhere is serving vermouth, and some of it is artisan vermouth. I mean, they make their own vermouth and all kinds of different flavors. And, we had one that was infused with jalapenos. That was maybe a little, I wouldn't have that again, but it was fun. It was interesting. And I was so inspired that I started for a while while everyone was making sourdough during the pandemic, I was making vermouth during the pandemic at home.
Oh, wow.
It was so much fun to, experiment with the different spices and the infusions and stuff like that, and creating your own vermouth. Haven't done it in a while. Thanks for sparking that idea. I should go back.
So how did it turn out?
It was good. It's not that hard. It really isn't. Once you understand what the ingredients are and how to actually do it, it's really fairly straightforward. It's just infusion, really. And it turned out good. Some are better than others, of course, but you can flex your creative muscles if you want and go off. And, you see this in Spanish cities that embrace vermouth. You can have all different kinds of flavors of vermouth. And like you said, the social aspect of it is really a lot of fun too.
And I'm not sure if this is true in Madrid as well, but certainly in Barcelona, almost every neighborhood will have a vermuteria. And very often they'll be, serving locally produced from some family that's been doing it for, hundreds of years.
Yeah. And they might even be making it in the back right there at the place.
Right.
It's fantastic. Well, Kevin Brass, it's been a delight talking to you, and folks should check you out at BarcelonaAnarchy.com. We'll also keep an eye out for your book. That sounds really interesting, and a very wide subject that you're covering with all different aspects of Barcelona. So I'm going to be anxious to pick up my copy when that comes out. Thank you so much for being here and sharing Barcelona, a city that you love so much.
Thanks, Brent. Really enjoyed it.
All right, there you go. Great conversation with Kevin. You can read his stuff on Substack at Kevin Brass or his website. Visit BarcelonaAnarchy.com. There's also links in the show notes. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, we are in Porto with Josh and Kaylee from Expats Everywhere for the best pastel de natas and monster sandwiches. Subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss that. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and Ed Silla. Thanks, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson, and I'll see you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.